Batman issue 108, James Tynion IV and Jorge Jimenez on the art. This is remember last issue, Batman took the disguise of Match, a slightly more hip version of his Matches Malone, to infiltrate the group in Gotham, the Unsane Society. Is it Society?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember if that's the right term for the using the name, but yeah, and very quickly it becomes apparent that this new character, Mighty Molly, if I'm remembering her name right.
Collective. Unsanity Collective.
Unsanity Collective, there you go. I knew it was just another word for group, but...
Yeah.
So, anyway, we have some of the things bubbling over. We have Nakano talking about masks, Barbara's reaction to this, Saint making his moves. That's kind of the B plot of the issue. But the main plot of the issue is Bruce undercover, but very quickly these characters, or at least Mighty Molly, is like,
Miracle Molly.
Miracle Molly. Is there a Mighty Molly? Am I making that up, or is it just because it sounds good?
I think you're just making it up.
Miracle Molly, I mean, we find out later on, she kind of just knew pretty quickly this is Batman. Like, the voice isn't that much of a disguise, he's too comfortable. When she takes him on a drone flight through the sky, he's far too relaxed about being that high up and stuff. He's like, this is clearly Batman. But we get the subtle thing where he puts on the black scarf or whatever it is, and it's very Zorro-esque, and they kind of point that out. But ultimately, this is about her showing him what this collective is. What is it doing? What is its function? And he's there because he wants information about who hired them to pull off this one job. And she's kind of like, just ask me your questions. I'll be honest about it. I'm not going to lie. I don't care. And it's like, yeah, like we were paid for that job, and we decided that it didn't conflict with any of our ethics. But ultimately, we do have ethics. We do have things we care about. This is about protecting the forgotten. She talks about. I get the impression that she, like, her previous life, like, her mind is like wiped of it, because she talks about watching the footage of like who she was, like taking the treatment, and like not recognizing that person. That she's a completely new person now.
That makes sense. I read it more as not recognizing the way, like, I can't believe I was ever like that sort of thing. But you could be right.
I think the reason why I took it as more of a literal thing is because the panel where she talks about it, she's literally like getting jacked into a machine. That is, it looks like it's very Matrixy, got the big sign, say kind of helmet and all that. It looks proper stuff. But I mean, I guess we'll get more of a clarification on that as time goes on, I imagine.
Oh, I'm sure we will, yeah.
Yeah, because the exact line is, I watched the footage once of the moments before I was going to turn. The woman I watched in that video, she looked so sad, scared, and desperate. So, yeah, it could go away.
You might be right, yeah.
But she's got like a science helmet on, so it looked like to me she was like literally like being altered by this machine in some way. But I do like when she calls him Batman. The shadow behind him making the bat ears trick. It's one of those things.
That was a nice touch.
It's not actually something that makes sense in the context of the scene, but I always forgive it because it's always just a artistic. It always looks license. Cool. It's an artistic license choice.
So sometimes when things look cool, you kind of let things slide.
Yeah. So basically, whoever did this wanted the city to be afraid, and Batman's looking for a name, and he gets it just as we get to the last page, which is Simon Saint. And meanwhile, throughout the issue, Simon Saint is recruiting the guard from Arkham to be Magistrate Number 1. That's kind of, we're getting to some of that meat of that stuff that's been teased in Future State. And kind of, why this guy agrees to this, why this Mahoney agrees to this, is like, well, he did get an arm and a leg literally blown off. He's probably fairly desperate, and the idea that he's being offered these ultra-futuristic cybernetic limbs and a chance to feel important, a chance to feel powerful.
And to kind of, we know his dream was to be a cop, but he ended up just a guard at Arkham. Mm-hmm. And this will be kind of, he'll be the first, Peacekeeper 1, he'll be the top cop.
And he also blames Gordon as well, because Gordon was the one in charge when he was rejected, when his application to join the force.
And vendetta against his family because of something his dad did.
Yeah, his dad was a dirty cop in Gotham. I mean, I think most cops at the time were dirty.
Yeah, yeah.
But yes, Gordon remembered the name and maybe thought twice about it before.
We would like to give Gordon the benefit of the doubt, right? And be like, no, he probably just didn't
I think
pass
there's
the tests.
I think there's every reason to give him the benefit of the doubt because all we're getting here is this one person's view of it and memory of it, and let's face it, he may be a little biased in his interpretation of the events.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing where he's given himself a reason over the years so that it wasn't my fault that I failed. It was, it's like Gordon.
Yeah. So the final page as we hear this is Batman's been given the breadcrumb trail to Simon Saint. We see like the process of turning Mahoney into this, Magistrate 1, Peacekeeper 1,
Peacekeeper 1, yeah.
So really solid plot progression issue. It's not as flashy as some of the other ones. Obviously, some very nice art. I think anything where Batman and Miracle Molly are in the skyline and it's just the lights of the city are making a backdrop. It's almost magical looking at the way it feels.
It's pretty gorgeous.
The colors are obviously very strong. A lot of purples, a lot of blues, greens, all that stuff. Really solid stuff. And Babs kind of like notices Scarecrow watching from above on one of the rooftops. She's kind of like monitoring the city, and that's one of the earlier beats in the issue.
He's been a bit creepy, just in the middle of the day, just on the rooftop.
As you do.
Yeah,
he's very invested in things. Yeah, I mean it's funny. Like it's one of these ones where it doesn't necessarily feel as like I think the last two issues had a lot of big things in them that made them feel a bit more like special or a bit more like because they had to be like okay, start of not the run but the start of this post Infinite Frontier phase of this run, this new chapter wants to make a big impression because a lot of people are maybe trying out the book again because it's kind of a soft relaunch and
we've kind of settled back into this is a normal issue. Yeah,
but I don't want to say that in a negative way because I actually think as far as the middle issue of an arc goes, this is actually perfectly solid and does nothing to.
No, it's still a good issue.
Me. Yeah,
it's not going above and beyond like some of the others.
I think this is the issue where Miracle Molly and how she interacts with Bruce, what her character is, what her motivations are, where she stands on the line of right and wrong, and all that kind of thing. Those are the important things in this issue, and I think this is a necessary issue in establishing this Insanity Collective because we've heard about them for a couple of issues now, but this is the one that kind of sets up the idea that they're not just this evil group. There's a bit more of a nuance to it.
I was going to say that about Molly herself, in that we know she's a villain, right? We've been told that this is the new villain they're introducing. She doesn't come across particularly villainous in this issue.
No, at the very least, this is a very different type of villain to the ones that Batman usually has to fight. Even compared to, we've had a lot of villains over the years that have been like, I'm going to do better than you at protecting Gotham because it needs to be eradicated first or something like that. This is very different in that she is very level-headed and does have, big notions and talks about, what Gotham's done to everyone, and they're using all the half-finished buildings that Wayne Enterprises were building during the expansion as bases, all that kind of stuff.
I think it's coming at a time where she's saying this to Bruce, where Bruce is realizing this himself over the past few months of his life, that that way wasn't necessarily working. Maybe there is more he could have been doing.
Yeah, because there's a great line later in the issue where she actually says to him, like, whatever pain you're carrying, whatever like caused you to become Batman, do you not think you could be a better Batman, a better better hero for this city if you left all that behind and were starting completely fresh, just as Batman? And he gives a very honest answer of I don't know. Like, and it's that interesting question because Batman is so defined by his tragic past and why he became Batman, and this idea that, well, let's say that you're inherently a good person and you're inherently someone who would want to make the city better, and we took your past away from you, would that be a better thing? There's definitely been Batman stories in the past that I can't name from the top of my head, but that have done the almost It's a Wonderful Life thing. What if Bruce never became Batman? And let's see how he's maybe helping the city through different ways, or maybe it is worse. Maybe the Waynes just abandoned Gotham because it eventually got to a point where it's just so terrible that they couldn't stay anymore.
Most recently, in King's run, right? The Booster Gold story.
Yeah, that's an example of it. Yeah, but that's definitely
it's definitely been done better than that as well. Let's be honest. I'm sure, but that's the most recent example that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's definitely not the first though, by any means. It's such an obvious plot beat to do. That is the same as Superman, same with all of them, really. Like they all do hell, the nail was what happens if Superman never was there. Like,
yeah,
really that simple, or at least not in the same way. So, yeah, it's a really solid middle issue, which I think progresses all the plots nicely, builds some intrigue, gives me a character in Miracle Molly who might ultimately be antagonistic, but has a bit more depth. So she feels very different to a Joker. I even there was an article, maybe in Newsarama, maybe somewhere else, but I saw it was on Twitter that said she's the anti-Joker, right? And
I think that was Newsarama.
I never read the article to see what their argument was, but I can sort of, even just thinking about that headline, I can kind of see the point that's being made.
Yeah, I mean, in the way that she's using chaos to bring stability and to do the right thing. In that Joker just wants chaos for chaos' sake.
It's strategic chaos. It's chaos to like move opinion, make people think differently. There's a strategy behind it, and it doesn't feel like they're just out to kill as many people as possible or anything like that. They actually want to change things. But it's even different from, say, because I mentioned how we've done tons of characters who think they can do things better, and you can even maybe throw Red Hood into that umbrella a little bit. The idea that, I'll do this better than Batman because Batman should be killing people. This is again different to that. This isn't someone saying, or a group saying, you need to be more vicious necessarily. It's saying you have to play differently. I mean, because one of the points she says later on, which again I think is a really good thing, and is in the same way that if we took away your past, would you be a better Batman? The idea of her saying, well, you started off by thinking criminals are scared and cowardly and that you can use fear. But what you fail to realize is that everyone is scared. Everyone is feeling cowardly in this city. And maybe you haven't utilized that with everyone else in the same. Not that she's saying you should be scaring all them like you are the criminals, but that shouldn't be ignored. It should be used in some way.
As a really nice, smart point as well, the title of this chapter is, The Cowardly Lot.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, and that doesn't really come into it until that conversation, which is in the last couple of pages, I think.
Yeah.
Where it really hits home what it is.
Yeah. It was making me think, I don't know if have you played Miles Morales yet?
I played about at least half, probably a bit more.
Yeah, I was actually getting some vibes. Miles has got like a friend in that who's in like a villainous kind of group. And I was getting some similar vibes to this in the same way that she's a fairly sympathetic character, even once, all said and done. You always understand where she was coming from, and like you don't hate her for what she was or what she was doing. And I think a sympathetic villain is something that Batman's not alien to. There's definitely sympathetic villains, and even like a Two-Face, there's that like, oh, maybe he can redeem himself, maybe he can become who he was at some point, or Clayface, the monster with the heart, all that kind of thing.
Man-Bat.
Yeah, we've had these types of villains, but I think this is maybe a little bit different to even Noah's, because this is potentially a villain where we'll always sympathize with what she was trying to do, even if we don't agree with it. And I think this does a decent job, I think, at least starting to build a sympathy with the audience, where I can see myself getting to the end of this story. Well, it's the end of this arc. I don't think it will be this arc. I think this is, this group's going to be present over a couple of arcs at the very least. I can see myself getting to the end of this story if it's done well enough and going, you know what? Obviously, she had to lose. They had to lose, but I feel kind of bad that they had to lose because she had a point. They had a point.
Yeah, she's kind of fallen alongside lines, a cross between those characters we were just talking about, and then someone like Poison Ivy, where there is like, no, we all understand her point, and she's not wrong in her goals. Just the methods are, should we say, questionable.
Yeah. I mean, Poison Ivy, I said this on the top 50 when her name came up, but Poison Ivy's a weird one because I feel like our understanding in the real world, our culture of climate change over the last several decades has probably altered how writers write Poison Ivy, because ultimately a lot of the things she says has actually got a lot more weight behind it than maybe people originally thought.
It probably is a large part of the reason why she has shifted away from being a villain to whatever she is now.
Yeah. I do think that sentiment changing is maybe partially contribute. I also do think there's a lot of horny people out there that just think she's hot, and that's maybe also contributed to the thirst. The thirst is real.
Hey, the thirsty people are happy with the villains as well.
True. So, get a shit Batman, though.
It was actually, I like I said, for all I'm like, oh, it's not that exciting. It's a middle issue. It's still really good, and I'm really enjoying it.
I think one of the things I said about last issue is I feel this again here is that I love the aura of what the city feels like right now. The ongoing threads with Barbara's Oracle, with Simon building up his thing, with Scarecrow building the sense of fear. Because at one point there's a random line in this. I mean, it may have even been in Next Batman actually, which is doing a good job of tying into continuity right now. Is the idea that everyone's just on edge because Scarecrow's next attack could come at any point, and that fear's built because he left that the literal Scarecrow in the mayor's house or whatever, and
yeah,
like there's a good sense of what the city is feeling as in a constant ongoing thing, and that's something that I think when you capture that, you really give me the sense of an ongoing series that I'm enjoying as a series where I'm like really invested in the world around it.
It's interesting because often people talk about writers using Gotham as a character. And usually they don't mean it in this way, right? They talk about the actual, the architecture, the mood of the buildings, the look. Whereas this here, the entire city of Gotham, obviously there are various people, there's I'm sure lots of different viewpoints, but the overriding kind of majority feeling is boiling down to, in this case, fear. And that is coming through. And it is using Gotham, the people, as a character rather than Gotham, the city.
Yeah, and I think that's smart. I think that builds a lot. And it builds the idea of, like, one of the things we always talk about in The Dark Knight, the movie, is that movie's about the battle for the people of Gotham, and they're the chaos versus order of, like, winning the minds of the city. And it does lead to this idea where, the happy ending for this arc or this batch of arcs, like the whole scope of the run, could simply be giving the city hope and making them feel like they aren't all screwed. Because right now it's in a really shitty place. They're all scared of Scarecrow. Obviously I didn't read issue 2 of Joker, but even the punchline story in the backup and what that was doing, where this like almost argument and like this for and against, was she being manipulated? Is she really a monster? And that's messing, and she's like building a following of people who are kind of getting extremists in their protests and things like that. Like all this sort of stuff is going on, and there's a lot of layers to what's going on in Gotham right now, which has been built very nicely amongst the different things. Because even obviously detectives adding a lot to it as well, with all the elite of Gotham and them being infected with a murderer and all this stuff. So, if at the end of this, the run could like find some sort of like hopeful tone or hopeful idea for Gotham, that could be the victory. That ultimately, no matter what else happens, no matter what misery we go through with Batman, and what misery some of the characters have to suffer, that could be the win.
I think it's possible that this issue is the mission statement for the run, in that it spoke about Batman. He thought it was a symbol of fear for the criminals, but everyone's afraid right now, and that includes presumably being afraid of Batman as well, on some level, because they're just scared of the idea, the what he stands for, even if they don't think they've done anything wrong. And I wonder if by the end it's kind of restoring that Batman is a symbol of hope, not a symbol of fear.
I do wonder, does that lead us then to a natural point in this run, probably towards the end, where Batman does become a bit more open to appearing publicly, whether that means in daytime or just means in a more friendly light, like, because right now, obviously, Montoya's been told to hunt the masks and all the rest of it, and everyone's kind of on edge. Like, does he actually make an appearance that's a bit more untypical Batman, where he actually maybe says something to a crowd or something, something like that, where he'll, I don't know, do make some sort of act of, like, not heroism, because he does that all the time anyway. Like, and but just not people. Everyone sees it, and the few that do, it's in a small confined place or something. Does he do something where he just like actually doesn't have some showmanship and to a crowd, but like, will he just extend something that shows improvement, where he leaves a little bit of who Batman was before behind? Is that kind of where we're going with this? Where I don't know what the example would be. That's why I'm not writing the book. That's why Tynan's writing the book.
That's his job to worry about. Yeah, but I suspect you're kind of in the right direction. Yes.
Yeah. So it could be interesting. And I don't necessarily think he's going to pull the Superman and reveal who he is. Although, funny thing is, because of how they've explored the comparison and what Batman thinks of Superman doing that, like, I'm not against at some point in the future Batman making the choice to end the secret identity. Like,
I'm not, but I think it can't be his decision in the way that
okay.
Superman, it was Clark's decision, right? Because how many people does that really affect, right? Lois and John was basically gone anyway, right? So kind of the two of them.
Yeah, you're telling me I have to get the Bat family in and like to have them vote on it.
Once everyone knows it's Bruce, it's like, well, it's really easy to work out. Dick and Tim, everyone, right? Because they're all
true.
so publicly connected to Bruce. I think it's a much bigger decision in that sense because it affects a lot more of them.
I think that's maybe one of the reasons why John was aged up and like away for a bit, is because I think it's a much harder choice for Clark to make if his son is in school and like revealing who he is would affect his life. But because he came back and he's already a teenager, well, we've kind of skipped over that, so there's no consequences for him in the same way that it would be. Like, I feel like it'd be like, you know what, I've decided I'm going to do this, but I'm going to wait until John leaves for college and he's an adult. Because doing this to him now when he's in, junior high is going to just completely cause chaos in his life. So
arguably would have made for a more interesting story, but
it could have been a more interesting story.
But I get where you're coming from, and maybe you're onto something with that being part of the reason as to why. It could well be.
On the flip side, though, I feel like Damien's the one who would care the least about being revealed. He's like, I don't care. I'm Damien. I'm here to the bat.
Yeah, Damien won't give a shit, but I think the others would, and I think they might even accept that no, this is the right thing to do, and might vote yes. We should reveal, go public, so to speak. But I think they would despise Bruce forever if he made that choice without their consent.
I wonder if he put him into a corner where he has to do it to like save the day, and it's not so much a choice that he makes, because he's being selfish. It's more just because I can't believe I'm going to do this. But one of the best things about Batman Forever is there's a moment where Two-Face demands that Batman reveal himself, and Bruce stands up and says, "I'm Batman." He doesn't really even hesitate. If it means saving lives, he's going to do it. It's just that no one hears him because the crowd's all screaming.
I just recorded an hour-and-a-half podcast with the biggest Batman Forever fan in the world, and he didn't mention Batman Forever once. And here I am for half an hour with you, and you go on about it.
It's boiling acid. But I don't know. Like, I wonder if you put him into a corner where they'll all understand why he had to do it in the moment, even if it's obviously if it was something where he just made the choice to do it. Yeah, it would be kind of a big F you to everyone else that would affect.
Yeah, no, that's fair to say.
But it's just one of those things where I don't think he's going to do that at the end of this run. I'll make that clear. I'm not suggesting that's actually going to happen. But I feel like the sort of change we're talking about is the sort of thing that could be a stepping stone to one day him saying, I do actually want to make that choice.
I just think, just where you're on that, so I think it's so interesting how optimistic we're being. In that, so far, everything is going down the path of future state coming true, right? And we're just kind of here going, well, it can't. We everything we're suggesting is like, no, the story has to be avoiding future state, and it probably does. But it is fascinating to me that we didn't even have that conscious conversation. There was no decision. We've just both come to this, no, this is the story.
Because it's not interesting if it just becomes exactly like Future State was, and Future State, if that wasn't just a warning of where it could go, then it's like, so we just spend, 5 arcs getting to Future State, and then, Future State's here, now we have to get our way out of it and somehow back to, a recognizable continuity for everything to carry on. No, it's not going to be that. That'd be annoying and stupid.
It would be.
So, yeah, somehow, at some point, there's going to be... And that'll be interesting, is, okay, what are the key moments or decisions that change the course of where this is going? Like, what's the key decision that either Bruce or someone else makes that stops Future State Batman from happening?
I think that's what's interesting as well, is the ripple effects of... There's a lot of different Future State books that were all technically, as far as we know, in the same continuity. And, the various books are building to their own stuff in different ways. We know the Superman family were having John take over as Superman. Clark's off to do Warworld stuff.
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that, again, like this, are building towards that status quo. And it's how far down this line do we go before we have to break away and kind of do something different?
Well, the fact is, some of them were set much further in the future than the others were. It depended on what the books were. And like some of the Superman stuff feels like it could be fairly soon enough, where maybe Warworld stuff, that could kind of just become like, I mean, I'm sure there's some small details that say otherwise, but the main bulk of it, like, there's no reason why that can't just be a story that's ongoing in present day Superman in a couple of arcs' time. But there's other stories where, okay, John Superman's fine, but Yara Flor's Wonder Woman. So those things have to line up, and how far in the future is she Wonder Woman? Like, things like that, where... And then there's other ones where it was like, ages away in the future, where it's like, well, we can't get to there naturally without a time jump. It just doesn't...
Yeah. Those ones are different.
So... yeah, I don't know. I haven't spent too much time thinking about it because I'm just trusting them here.
I'm not either, and I only brought it up because we were talking about it just again because we're assuming it's not going to hit that point, and we were just talking about it like, oh, this is what will probably happen. This is what we think might happen, and at no point did any of us say, yeah, but Future State says this. You know, it was just a complete disregard of that. Like, oh, that's not going to hold them back, and it was. I just kind of noticed that we hadn't kind of even considered that.
Because I'll put it this way, if we end up to exactly what the Batman side of things were in Future State and Batman, and to an extent Detective Comics, if we just get to exactly what Future State was, then Future State itself was kind of pointless, because why set up all these threads and details if we're not going to change it, if we're not going to show where things can go, and then introduce Peacemaker 1 or Peacekeeper 1 and do these things like throughout. If you're not going to show how we change things, if we're just going to have it play out and just go exactly to the B, if we're on point A just there, if we're just going to get to point B, exactly the point B we're expecting to get to, then you've not done anything with the story. You've just got there. And it's not.
I agree. Yeah.
There's no change, and you change. The key thing about a story is you have point A to point B, and there's a change. There's an arc. And that is the fundamental 101. That is the key thing you need in a story.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the key thing. And obviously there's other stories on the way there and stuff, but if it just gets to what Future State was with no change, with no variation, with no idea that it's, first of all, like if it was, let's say Batman was going to get there exactly, then what is every other book that had a Future State example going to get to those exact futures at the same time? Or varying points? That would be really dull. It'd be a really stupid choice.
It would be weird, yeah.
Again, I trust them not to do something silly like that.
Yeah, me too.
So, yeah, main story's solid.
It is.
Batman 108. What are you giving the main story?
I'm giving it a 7.5. Not quite as flashy as previous issues, but really solid. Nuts and bolts, middle of the story stuff.
I'm happy to give it the A. I think it's a great middle issue. And that comes with whatever caveats you want to give it, but the art's fantastic. All the stuff with them up in the top of the skyscrapers that are unfinished with the city lights behind us. That full page spread of when they're first on the drone, just flying over the city, looks gorgeous. A lot of that stuff, and I think Simon Saint being this little sniveling prick who is like tricking. He's like, oh, we're going to make you spend a penny for your cybernetic things. It's just that, if this magistrate program goes through, you'll be Peacekeeper number 1 and you'll do your... And we kind of know from Future State that he's going to be fairly into it, so it's not like he's... But I do wonder if there's going to be an element of this where it's going to be a little bit more tragic, where we're going to feel like he's actually been kind of coerced.
There's an obligation into it rather than he wants to.
And he's a prick in the future, but like, what steps along the way make him that prick?
I mean, he's a bit of a prick already, let's be honest.
What, Mahoney?
A little bit.
Oh, but he still saved people. There's a sympathy there because he actually did do the heroic thing before.
He did. He's. I'm not saying he's a bad person, but like I say, things like him being so jaded and bitter about Gordon that may or may not even be true. And he's been holding on to that for years. Tells me, okay, no, he's probably at least a bit of a prick, and Gordon probably didn't accept him for a reason.
Yeah, I think bitter is a fair word. He's a bitter man. So then the Ghostmaker back up with him on the island fighting the robot tigers, try to get to this Madame Gold or whatever her name is. It was something like that. Madame Midas, that's what it was. Madame Midas. That was close. That was close.
Gold Midas, yeah, acceptable link.
So, basically, and this seems to be the setup for what the formula for these backups is going to be, is because she has all these villains that have faced them before, and one which appears to be a little girl tells the story of the last time she encountered them. I've got a feeling the next 4 or 5 of these are going to be the other villains telling their story, and that's how they're going to format this. Which, I mean, it's fine because it fits neatly into a 10-page thing. A little bit of setup and then the story itself.
It's fine. They're just not super engrossing.
No, I appreciate trying to do more. I think the problem with this is instead of giving us a story, at least so far, which makes me like Ghostmaker by giving me something to sympathize with or empathize with, it's more about trying to sell me on how cool he is because he's got all these fighting skills, and look at how cool the fight is, where he cuts off her face and then like her head melts back together.
Yeah.
It's one of the things. I think me and Matt said this with the first part of this backup, but it is very much a wrestling thing of trying to oversell someone by saying, "Look at how great they are," because we're going to like make them destroy 50 other people. But the problem is we know it's written, it's a script, so you're just making him overpowered to try and get him over to make us think he's cool and badass. But if you try too hard without giving him any weight, it comes across as try hard, and it comes across as a bit just a bit fabricated, and it just doesn't feel like it's hitting. So, not that I hate Ghostmaker, it's just it does feel like it's trying a bit hard to make me think he's cool.
Yeah, and we didn't particularly love him in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, my dislike of him to begin with was more about the retconning into Batman's backstory.
Yeah, it never gave us anything about him personally that we enjoyed.
No. He's just a little bit lame. He's not amazingly lame. I'm not like, oh, Ghostmaker's been mentioned. Like I'm not at that stage by any means, but he's a little bit lame.
Yeah.
He's a little bit
I'm
lame.
with you.